They say betrayal cuts deepest when it comes from family, and I learned that lesson the hard way. My own father looked right past me and chose my cousin instead. He poured everything he had into Ryan's future, money, support, attention, while I was left behind like I didn't even exist. But life doesn't let that kind of injustice slide forever. In the end, he found himself drowning in regret, while I scraped and clawed my way forward, building a life from the ground up with nothing but grit and stubborn hope. I never imagined I'd be telling this story, especially not now, at 27 years old, yet here I am, carrying the weight of memories I never asked for, shaped by a past that still echoes louder than I'd like to admit. If there's one thing that's always been complicated in my life, it's family. My mom died giving birth to me. I never knew her, not even for a second. And honestly, I think that's where everything started to go sideways. My dad couldn't cope with losing her. He shut down emotionally, and it felt like, in his mind, I was the reason she was gone. That kind of pain, I guess, can change a person. But instead of healing, he built a wall between us and left it there. Relatives would tell me how much my mom had wanted to have a child. She struggled with fertility for years before she finally got pregnant with me. From what I've heard, she was glowing with excitement, couldn't stop talking about the baby, and was counting down the days. Knowing that makes it harder, honestly. It's like the dream she held on to for so long came true, only for it to be ripped away the moment it arrived. And the part that always gets me is that I was that dream, and also the reason she wasn't there anymore. Our house growing up looked like a memorial to someone I never met. Her pictures were on nearly every wall. Her clothes were still in the closet, untouched, and her favorite books were exactly where she left them. It was like time had frozen the day she died, and no one ever hit play again. I remember sneaking into their bedroom as a kid, just to look at her things, to touch the fabric of her old scarves or flip through the pages of her journals. I think I was just trying to feel something, some kind of connection. Anything at all. My dad, though, he was a ghost in his own way. He made sure I had food on the table, clothes to wear, and got to school on time. He did the basics, but that was it. No affection, no encouragement, no conversations that meant anything. It was like living with a stranger who didn't want to be reminded of your existence. He never hugged me, never told me he loved me, not once. Even when I brought home good grades or tried to do something to make him proud, it always felt like I was invisible. Most days, we barely exchanged a word. And when we did talk, it was usually criticism or worse, comparisons. He'd always bring up Ryan. Why can't you be more like Ryan? Or Ryan would never do that. Those words stuck with me. It wasn't just a passing comment, it was a pattern. It was like Ryan was the son he always wanted, and I was just the leftover reminder of what he lost. Ryan's dad, my uncle, died in a car crash when Ryan was just 8. After that, my dad sort of stepped in as a father figure to him. I remember the day we got that phone call. It was pouring outside, one of those gray, cold afternoons. I was sitting at the kitchen table, working through some math homework when the phone rang. My dad answered, and I watched his whole face shift. He didn't say much, just listened. And then he broke. That was the first and only time I saw him cry. After he hung up, he sat down heavily at the table and just stared off into space. I didn't know what to say or do. I just sat there with him, quiet. After that, Ryan started coming around a lot more. At first, I thought it might be a good thing. Maybe having someone else in the house would change the atmosphere. Maybe it would soften my dad a little, bring some warmth back into the place. But it didn't take long to see that Ryan's presence just made everything harder for me. Dad lit up when Ryan was around. He smiled more, talked more, joked even. And I faded more into the background. Ryan was athletic, funny, and confident. He played sports, made friends easily, and had that natural charm people gravitate toward. I was the opposite, shy, bookish, quiet. I liked science and space and things that made me feel small in a good way. But none of that mattered to my dad. He was all about Ryan. He'd praise him over the tiniest achievements. Nice shot, Ryan. Or, you've got a real talent, kid. Meanwhile, I was just trying to get noticed. I worked hard, trying to be someone he'd be proud of. I studied, tried to get into the things he liked, joined sports teams, even though I hated it. I did what I could to earn his approval. But nothing was ever enough. One year, when I was about 13, I built a moving solar system model for the school science fair. It took weeks of careful work, tiny motors, hand-painted planets, the whole deal. I won first place, and I was so excited to tell him. I came home thinking, maybe this is it. Maybe this is the thing that'll finally get through to him. But when I walked in, he was sitting with Ryan, laughing about some football game. I told him I'd won, and he barely looked up, just gave me a quick nod and turned right back to Ryan like nothing happened. That moment stuck with me, not just because he ignored me, but because it made me realize something important. No matter what I did, I was never going to be Ryan. And to my dad, that meant I was never going to be enough. Most of the time, it felt like I didn't even exist. And as we got older, that feeling only got worse, probably because the favoritism became even more obvious. People used to tease Ryan and me since we were in the same grade, but I always did better in school. Still, my dad would never give me any credit. He'd brush it off, saying stuff like, "Ryan's got bigger things to worry about than test scores." No matter how hard I worked, it was never enough to matter. There was this one time during high school when my English teacher pulled my dad aside during a parent-teacher conference. She couldn't stop praising a paper I'd written, said it was one of the best essays she'd read from someone my age. She even told him she believed I had the potential to be a real writer someday. My dad just gave a grunt and asked if any of that would lead to a scholarship in sports. I wanted to disappear. The teacher just looked puzzled, and I remember my face burning with shame. That kind of thing happened more than once. Even with all that, I kept hoping things would change. Deep down, a part of me still believed I could somehow figure out the one thing that would finally earn his approval, some magic key that would unlock whatever love or pride he had buried. I spent my entire childhood chasing that feeling, and it carried right into my teen years. When college applications rolled around, I pushed myself hard. I got accepted into a decent university and thought, this is it. This is where things turn around. I knew money would be tight, but I believed my dad would pitch in, at least a little. I couldn't have been more wrong. One day, I accidentally overheard him talking on the phone with Ryan, telling him not to worry about the costs. He'd cover Ryan's full tuition. I just stood there, frozen. My heart sank. Later, when I asked if he could help me out too, he looked at me like I'd lost my mind. He said, "Ryan needs it more. I can't afford both of you." And just like that, my plans came crashing down. I tried to make it work anyway. I got a part-time job at a local diner, working nights and weekends. I hunted for scholarships, applied to anything I could find. But no matter how hard I tried, it just wasn't enough. Balancing classwork, long shifts, and trying to study left me burned out. After one exhausting semester, I had to face the truth. I couldn't keep up. I had no choice but to drop out. I just couldn't afford it on my own. Meanwhile, Ryan was off living the dream at a top university, fully funded by my dad. He posted pictures of his fancy dorm room, his spring break trips, and the brand new laptop my dad bought him. Each photo felt like a gut punch, a reminder of everything I never got. That was the breaking point for me. I packed my bags and walked away from that house for good. I cut ties with both my dad and Ryan. It hurt like hell, but I knew I had to get out of there. I couldn't keep living under the shadow of a mother I never met and a cousin who had somehow taken my place in my father's heart. The years that followed weren't easy. I bounced from one odd job to another, anything I could do to scrape by. I waited tables, did construction work, pulled overnight shifts at gas stations, whatever kept a roof over my head and food on the table. There were nights I wondered if I'd made a mistake leaving, but I always came back to the same answer. Staying would have broken me even more. It wasn't easy watching Ryan's perfect life unfold online. He graduated, landed a high-paying job, and kept posting about all his successes. But while he was climbing ladders, I was slowly learning to stand on my own 2 feet. I got a steady job, nothing glamorous, but it paid the bills. Right now, I manage a small bookstore in town. It's not the path I imagined, but being surrounded by books every day brings me a kind of peace I never had growing up. And I haven't given up. I started taking night classes at the local community college, still working toward that degree. It's been a long road, and nothing about it has been easy. But it's mine, and I've made every step on my own. Along the way, I met people, real friends, who saw me for who I was, not who they wanted me to be. They became my chosen family. We've built something together. We do game nights, go camping when we can, and we're always there for each other. It's not picture perfect, but it's honest, and it's real. For the first time, I felt like I'd truly left that old pain behind. But life doesn't always let you forget the past. Just yesterday, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. When I picked up, I nearly dropped the phone. After long years of silence, it was my dad on the other end. And he wasn't calling to catch up. He needed something. I honestly didn't know how to feel after that call. But if there was one thing I was sure of, it was that I wasn't that desperate kid anymore, the one constantly chasing his approval, hoping for crumbs of affection. That version of me was long gone. It's been a week now since that unexpected phone call from my dad, and I'm still trying to wrap my head around it all. Hearing his voice again stirred up a wave of memories, most of them the kind I'd rather forget. But something in his tone caught me off guard. He sounded different, older, worn down, maybe even scared. He started with small talk, asking how I'd been, as if we were catching up after a vacation and not a years of silence. The whole thing felt weird and forced, like he was pretending the past didn't exist. But then he got to the real reason he called. He needed money, a lot of it. At first, I couldn't even speak. I mean, here was the man who didn't lift a finger to help me through college, who watched me struggle while he handed everything to Ryan. And now, he was turning to me for help. The irony hit hard. When I finally found my words, I asked him straight up, why me? Why now? What about Ryan? Wasn't that his golden boy? Shouldn't Ryan be the one helping him out? There was a pause on the other end, and then he muttered something about Ryan being too busy with his new job and not having the means to help. That made me laugh, genuinely. After all those years of being told Ryan was better than me in every possible way, now he couldn't come through? I didn't hold back. I told him exactly what I thought about that. I said maybe you should call Ryan again. Maybe Ryan could take a break from his important new life and figure it out. My dad was quiet for a while, and then he tried to talk about regrets. He started saying he'd made mistakes and wanted to make things right. But I cut him off. I wasn't interested in hearing a last-minute apology. I'd spent most of my life trying to earn his approval, chasing a connection he never seemed to want. And now, just because he needed something, I was supposed to believe he was suddenly the father I always wanted. I told him it was too late. I hung up not long after that. And the second the call ended, I felt a wave of emotions hit me all at once. A piece of me felt guilty. After all, he was still my father. But an even bigger part of me felt something stronger, relief. For the first time, I had stood my ground. I hadn't folded. I didn't slip back into that old role of trying to please him. I was done chasing what he was never willing to give. The days that followed were tough. I couldn't stop replaying that conversation in my head, asking myself if I'd gone too far or done the right thing. But then I started remembering all the times I'd needed him and he wasn't there. Yeah, there was the college stuff. But it was more than that. It was the little things. The everyday moments when a kid looks for guidance, for support. Like school events, dating advice, or just someone to help with learning to drive. One memory stood out in particular, my first heartbreak. I was 17, and I was sure this girl, Emily, was the one. We'd been together for about 6 months, and then she dumped me for one of the football guys. I came home wrecked, eyes red, heart crushed. My dad was in the living room watching TV like always. I stood there, hoping he'd ask me what was wrong, but he didn't even turn his head, just grunted and told me I was blocking the screen. I went to my room and cried myself to sleep that night. Then there was when I finally got my driver's license. Most of my friends had dads who taught them how to drive. Not me. I had to convince our neighbor, Mr. Henderson, to take me out in his old sedan. And when I passed my test, I came home excited, license in hand. My dad was in the garage with Ryan, working on the car. I showed them, and Ryan said congrats. My dad? He just nodded, barely looked up, and went back to talking about spark plugs or something. He never even offered to let me drive his car. Thinking back, it made me wonder just how serious his situation must be for him to ask me for money. My dad was always proud, almost to a fault. For him to reach out like this, it had to be something big. And yeah, I worried a little. It's hard not to, even after everything. But then I remembered how often I had to worry about my future. Back when I had no money, no degree, and no help. I had to figure everything out alone. I pulled myself together and started from scratch without a cent from him. So why should I rescue him now? I thought back to that first year on my own. I had left home and moved to a place where no one knew my name. I took any job I could find, washing dishes, unloading trucks, cleaning offices, just to afford a cramped little studio that barely had enough space for a bed and a table. It was the hardest year of my life, but it was mine. I survived it without him. Back in those early days after I moved out, I'd spend my mornings cleaning buildings and my nights behind the bar, pouring drinks for strangers. I was exhausted all the time, but somehow, I pushed through. Most nights, when I got back home from bartending, my legs ached, and the smell of smoke and stale beer clung to my clothes. I'd collapse onto my bed and wonder, did I make the wrong call? Could I have just swallowed my pride, stayed home, and tried to make peace with my dad? But those thoughts didn't last long. The second I remembered what it felt like to live under his constant judgment, always being told I wasn't enough, I knew I'd made the right choice. Leaving that house meant reclaiming my dignity, and I wasn't going to regret that. Not anymore. As time passed, that decision felt more and more like a turning point. Refusing to give in to his recent request wasn't just about money. It was about drawing a line. For the first time, I had shown him that I wasn't the kid he used to ignore and dismiss. I was an adult now. I made my own decisions. And I didn't owe him a thing. Still, part of me couldn't help but be curious. What had happened to make him reach out like that? What changed that Ryan, the perfect son, wasn't the one helping this time? A few times, I thought about trying to get answers, but I hesitated. Did I really want to open that door again? Was it worth digging up all the pain I'd worked so hard to bury? At one point, I thought about calling my aunt, Ryan's mom. She could be distant sometimes, but she'd always been kind to me in her own way. If anyone knew what was going on, she might. But then I remembered the last time I saw her. It was at a family gathering just before I left for college. She wrapped Ryan in a warm hug and praised him for getting into a great school. When it was my turn to say goodbye, all I got was a polite smile and a pat on the shoulder. That memory sealed it for me. I wasn't going to call her. As I sat down to write all this out, I realized I still wasn't sure what I wanted to do next. A big part of me just wanted to move on, stay focused on building my own life, and leave the past in the rearview mirror. But another part of me, maybe the more stubborn part, still wondered what really happened between my dad and Ryan. I figured I'd leave it alone. Let time decide if I ever needed to look deeper. But, as it turns out, I didn't wait long. It's been about a month since that call. A lot has come to light. Despite everything I told myself about moving on, curiosity eventually got the better of me. I needed answers. I wanted to understand why, after everything, my dad suddenly needed help, and why Ryan wasn't the one stepping up. So, I started quietly reaching out to people in the family who still talked to my dad. At first, nobody wanted to say much. It was like they were walking on eggshells. But little by little, I gathered enough pieces to see the bigger picture. The first person I called was Mrs. Miller. She had been my mom's best friend and was always kind to me when I was growing up. She sounded surprised to hear from me but was happy to catch up. After some small talk, I gently steered the conversation toward my dad and Ryan. There was a pause, and then she let out a long sigh. She told me my dad hadn't just helped Ryan with college. He'd gone way beyond that. He'd co-signed for a house, bought Ryan a car, and even dumped money into some business venture Ryan had dreamed up after graduation. To pull all that off, my dad had taken out loans, maxed out his credit cards, and was now drowning in debt. All to give Ryan the future he thought he deserved. She also mentioned a conversation they'd had a few years back. My dad had been bragging about Ryan, saying he was going to be some hotshot entrepreneur. When she asked how I was doing, he just shrugged and said something like, "I hope he's all right." That stuck with her. She said his voice held no warmth, just apathy. That conversation left a pit in my stomach, but I kept digging. Next, I reached out to Mr. Henderson, my old neighbor, the one who taught me how to drive. He was still living in the same house and still kept tabs on the neighborhood. He told me about Ryan's so-called startup, a tech company he'd launched with a few friends from college. My dad, in his usual overly trusting way, had poured a ton of money into it. Even went so far as to remortgage his house to help fund the project. But here's the kicker, that business went belly up. Completely flopped. Ryan's new dream job, the one my dad used to brag about, didn't pan out the way they hoped. Now Ryan was struggling too, scrambling just to stay afloat. And when my dad finally turned to him for help, hoping he could at least return the favor, Ryan told him he didn't have anything to give. Mr. Henderson had overheard one of their arguments a few weeks ago. He said it was loud enough that half the block probably heard it. Apparently, my dad accused Ryan of being ungrateful, and Ryan fired back that he never asked for all the help in the first place. It was messy. Hearing all this stirred up a strange mix of emotions. On one hand, I felt almost vindicated. All those years my dad bet everything on Ryan, and now, when he needed someone, Ryan couldn't deliver. But on the other hand, it didn't feel as good as I thought it might. It just felt sad. Sad that it took this kind of downfall for my dad to realize the consequences of his choices. Ryan had shown up at my dad's place one afternoon, pulling into the driveway in some flashy new car, shiny paint, loud engine, the whole show. My dad wasted no time. He cornered him about the failed business deal and all the money he had put into it. From what I heard, Ryan didn't take it well. He blew up, shouting that it wasn't his fault, that the market shifted, that things had changed, and promised he'd pay my dad back when he could. Then he jumped into that car and sped off, tires screeching, leaving my dad standing there alone, looking completely defeated. And I'll be honest, a small part of me felt something I'm not exactly proud of. Maybe it was vindication. After spending most of my life being measured against Ryan and always coming up short in my dad's eyes, it turned out that Mr. Perfect wasn't quite so perfect after all. The guy who supposedly could do no wrong had made a mess bigger than any I ever had. But more than anything, I just felt tired. Tired of all the drama, the emotional roller coasters, the weight of resentment that never seemed to go away. I couldn't stop thinking about how things might have been different if my dad had just chosen to invest in me the way he had poured everything into Ryan. Maybe I would have finished school. Maybe I'd be in a better job, living a different kind of life. But then again, maybe not. Maybe I wouldn't have learned half the things I did, like how to stand on my own 2 feet, how to push through even when it felt impossible. I remembered those early days after college fell through. I had to grind, juggling 2, sometimes 3 jobs, living off ramen noodles and burnt coffee just to keep the lights on. I'd come home from exhausting shifts and still find time to study and learn, even without sitting in a classroom. It wasn't easy, but it built something in me that college never could have. Looking back, that struggle shaped me. It forced me to grow up fast. It taught me how to keep going when no one else was clapping for me. That's not something I'd trade. Still, I felt like I needed to say something to my dad. Not for him, but for me. So I decided to send him a text. I let him know that I was aware of what had happened with Ryan and the money situation. I didn't offer to step in or help out financially. And I didn't throw it in his face either. What I said, plain and simple, was that I hoped he could finally see how the choices he made affected both of us. A few hours passed before he wrote back. It was a long message. He apologized, really apologized. Not just a half-hearted, sorry, to move on, but something that felt real. He admitted he'd treated me unfairly. He said he let his grief over losing my mom cloud everything. Said he'd been angry at the world and didn't know how to be a father to me. And then he wrote something that caught me off guard. He said my mom would have been proud of the man I'd become, even if he hadn't done much to help me get there. He asked if we could meet up. Just talk. No expectations, just a conversation. I sat with that message for a long time. There was still a piece of me, a quiet, hopeful part, that wanted to say yes. That little kid inside me still longed for his dad's love. I imagined what it might be like to sit down together, talk things out, and somehow patch up years of hurt like it was that simple. Like a movie ending where everything clicks into place. But I knew better. I thought about all the milestones he missed. My high school graduation, how I scanned the crowd hoping to see his face, only to feel that sharp sting when I realized he never came. I thought about the day I moved into my first apartment, how I hauled thrift store furniture up 3 flights of stairs by myself. And the promotion I got recently at the bookstore, something I should have been celebrating with family, but instead I just told a few close friends. So, in the end, I wrote him back. I told him that I appreciated the apology and that maybe one day we could talk, but I wasn't ready yet. Not now. I needed time. And more importantly, I needed to put myself first for once. Even though I acknowledged his apology, I made sure he understood that an "I'm sorry" wasn't going to erase everything. Words, especially after all these years, didn't change the pain I carried from the years of being overlooked, pushed aside, and made to feel like I never measured up. I told him honestly that I needed time, real time, and space to process everything. And I asked him, directly, to respect that boundary. More importantly, I didn't leave room for confusion when it came to money. I told him point blank, I wasn't going to bail him out. He had made his choices, and now he had to live with the consequences. Just like I had to live with mine. I had built a life without any help from him. It wasn't perfect, but it was mine. I wasn't going to jeopardize my stability to fix the mess someone else created. Like a weight I've carried for far too long has finally started to lift off my shoulders. For most of my life, I chased something that felt just out of reach, his love, his approval. I twisted myself into knots wondering why I wasn't enough. Why Ryan always got the praise, the attention, the support. What was wrong with me? Now I understand. None of it was ever about me. It was about him. About a man who never figured out how to deal with his pain after losing my mom. A man who never knew how to raise a son without resenting the circumstances that brought him into the world. His grief, his guilt, they warped everything. I just happened to grow up in the middle of it. As for the future, I honestly don't know what lies ahead when it comes to my dad. Maybe one day we'll sit down and have a real conversation, open, honest, no filters. Maybe we'll finally talk about everything that's gone unsaid for decades. Or maybe we won't. And I've come to a place where either outcome is okay. Right now, my energy is going toward my life. I'm still enrolled in night classes, moving steadily toward that degree I've wanted for years. It's slow going, but I've learned that progress, real, lasting progress, takes time. I'm also investing in the people around me who see me for who I truly am, not who they wish I'd be. Just last week, I helped my friend Emily, not the one from high school, a different one, move into her new place. We spent the day unpacking boxes, arranging furniture, figuring out where to hang pictures. And somewhere in between setting up her kitchen and assembling a crooked bookshelf, it hit me. This is what matters. These friendships. These moments. This chosen family I've built. Not the approval of a man who couldn't see my worth when it counted. Life isn't always smooth. It still throws punches now and then. But I'm building something solid, something real. And for the first time in a long time, I feel like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. I don't know what tomorrow will bring. No one does. But I know this, I'll meet it head on. With grit, with heart, and with the kind of strength that only comes from standing on your own when no one else is there to catch you. That strength? My father's favoritism can never take that away from me.